Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Export to Japan podcast. And for this edition, we are going to be diving in and learning a lot more about the world of brand licensing, marketing solutions, and consulting solutions around that particular sector. And I'm about to welcome our special guest today. And in fact, when I welcome him to the podcast, actually, it's not welcoming him for the first time, because we did interview Roger and have a great discussion with him 9 years ago, back in 2015, on this very topic. And we know that that was one of our popular webinar productions we did at the time, and we had a lot of questions and a lot of interest around that. So it's long overdue to catch up with Roger again and get an update of where he is at and all the latest information on this exciting sector of brand licensing in Japan. Just by way of an introduction, Roger has been, he's a long-term resident of Japan. I think it was somewhere in the mid-80s, Roger first moved over to Japan, and he has over 30 years experience in this particular business sector, so a wealth of knowledge for us to tap into. He's a fluent Japanese speaker, moved over to Japan from Liverpool here in the UK. And as I mentioned, we are delighted to have him back following up on our very successful webinar we recorded back in 2015. So Roger, great to have you back with us, and welcome back to the Export to Japan podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy because Liverpool won last night after being defeated Nottingham Forest the other day, so I'm sort of in a better mood. It's great to be back. 9 years, I can't believe it. Seems like yesterday I did that first webinar, but watching that webinar when I was putting together my notes for this one, I thought, oh my God, it looks so different in those days.
Oh, well,
anyway.
You're looking as handsome as ever, Roger, handsome as ever, and you don't look like you've aged a moment in those 9 years. Believe me, you really don't. And
it's
I
amazing.
love...
It's amazing what Zoom filters can do.
I love your reference to the football. So you've been away from Liverpool for so long, but what's the saying? You can take the man out of Liverpool, but you can't take Liverpool out of the man, right?
That's right. That's correct.
Well,
yes.
Listen, it is great to catch up with you, and I know you're a very busy man, so we're delighted to finally be able to get some time to speak with you again, and thank you once again for coming and joining us. Now, some of our viewers and listeners may remember the 2015 podcast, and they may be sort of using this as a bit of a refresh and a bit of a catch-up, but I also suspect a lot of the listeners to this discussion will be the newer entrants to the market that have maybe already started their work to enter the Japanese market, or maybe they will be companies and organizations that are just thinking about Japan at the moment and wondering if there is an opportunity for them in the licensing sector and how to go about that. So great to sort of have this discussion and have a bit of a refresh, maybe bring knowledge to a new audience for the first time. And and to get the discussion going, I'd like to sort of ask you a fairly general question and really get your view on licensing as a kind of an industry and a sector. It's not necessarily a widely known industry. So could you give us a little bit of a summary of the licensing business model and its sort of benefits as a business model, please?
Very much so. Before I go into what licensing is, just let me give you an idea of the size of the market. If you take, for example, luxury goods, okay, there's about $350 billion of luxury goods sold per year. The gaming industry is projected by 2027 to also be a market worth $350 billion. Licensing, which most people haven't heard of, what's that, they say to themselves, is a market of the same size globally. So in 2023, last year, for example, the licensing market was worth between $340 to $360 billion. So you might not know about it, but it's huge. That's the first thing I want to point out. So exactly what is licensing? Well, as you said, it's not really widely known, but it has some amazing benefits as a business model. So what is licensing? Essentially, it's a business arrangement where the owner of an IP or a brand, who's called the licensor, they give permission or they give a license to another company who is the licensee to use the IP, such as trademarks, logos, characters, art, patterns, whatever, upon agreed terms for the license. And The same thing, for example, if it's product licensing, it'd be merchandise. Character licensing could be media or entertainment, or even might be franchise. The whole franchise business model is essentially the same kind of structure. And this is governed, of course, by having a license agreement in place, which details the scope of the use, the duration of the license, the royalty rates, and all the other terms. What are the advantages of licensing? Well, it's a very unique business model because it's a win-win for both the brand owner, the user who's the manufacturer, the retailer, and the end user, which is the consumer. Basically, first thing is revenue generation. It provides an additional income stream for the brand owners through licensing fees and royalties without the need to actually have to directly manufacture those products yourselves or distribute them. I mean, it's great. It's free, well, so to speak. But, you know, for the brand owner, that is a very, very big thing. They don't have to pay for investment in tooling or anything. The other thing is they tap into the expertise of the licensee who is a specialist in that field. Okay, so for example, one of my clients is Kikkoman, the soy sauce company out of Japan. We have a brand licensing program in Europe and North America. We are working with one of the best t-shirt companies out there. Kikkoman makes soy sauce. They don't make t-shirts, but they get to enjoy the income from the t-shirts with the Kikkoman logo on it, working with the best company, and that company is paying them royalties. So it's a win-win for all. The other thing is market expansion. It allows brands to enter new markets and reach new customer segments through the licensee's distribution. They don't have to establish distribution themselves. They're working with another platform. Another one is, of course, brand awareness. It builds brand awareness. You don't have to pay for advertising as a brand owner. The licensee who gets the brand might be a company not known by anyone, but if they're putting Hello Kitty on their product, suddenly everyone knows it. Okay, brand awareness. And that's also good if you're a brand owner as well, who wants to increase awareness of your own brand if you have limited financial resources. Another thing is risk mitigation. As a licensor, you don't have to invest in tooling, in production, building market share. That's all done by the licensee. So as a brand owner, you're mitigating or at least reducing your financial risk. And then finally, you're leveraging the expertise of the licensee and using their capabilities in the areas of production, marketing, distribution, really, you know, being in the zone for that particular product category. So those are five advantages of brand licensing. It's a win-win for all. There's a couple of downsides. One is you could lose control because you are not manufacturing the product yourselves, you're licensing it out to a third party. But you can kind of mitigate those risks through having a very, very strong QC, quality control process. Nothing goes to the next stage until it's approved by the brand owner, okay, in the design, the pre-production prototypes, etc. And there's also a slight risk of brand dilution. You know, if you're sort of a fairly high-end brand and you license too much, people think it's going to look cheap. And if you can't control the quality of the distribution, it can dilute the brand. But again, if you use a good agent to help, you know, really produce the brand well, that risk can also be mitigated.
Brilliant. That's a really good, powerful overview, Roger, and a very good summary of this particular sector. So thank you for that. You mentioned a couple of Japanese characters and brands you spoke about there. Kikkoman, that I know you're doing some long-term work with, a really successful project with, and you also touched on Hello Kitty. And I'm sure which
is not one of mine, by the way. A disclaimer, it's not one of mine.
Yeah, if most of our viewers don't know Kikkoman, they certainly will know Hello Kitty as a reference point. So, and of course, as I mentioned in the introduction, your vast experience, you have global experience, I know, but your really focused experience is on Japan, and that's a topic of today's discussion. So nice. How about when we sort of take this into the Japanese market in that context, are there any particular unique characteristics that we should make our viewers aware of with relation to the Japanese market in this area?
Right. My experience actually covers Japan and pretty much East Asia, but my focus traditionally has been on the Japanese market, as I speak Japanese. I think in terms of market characteristics, Japan is one of the world's largest markets for character licensing. of course, by both GDP and retail market size, States is first, China is second, Japan is third. Up to like a decade ago, maybe Japan was second, but that's now really been overtaken by China. In terms of the market size for Japan, when it comes to character licensing, so earlier I talked about globally, it's about 350 billion US dollars. Of that, Japan is about 15.5 billion. So what, 5%? That's from one survey from an organization called Licensing International, which is a global membership trade body for the industry. Another survey by a Japanese market research company called Character Data Bank. They've been doing a survey for about over 15 years now, and they kind of value the character sector, so not sports, not fashion, character sector only. It's about just 11.86 billion US dollars, actually in Japanese yen, 1.56 trillion Japanese yen. That was back in 2022. So Japan is big. In terms of the major industry players, you've got, of course, I mentioned Sanrio before. You've got Bandai Namco Entertainment, Konami, the game company. Disney, of course, is very big. Toei Animation, Kadokawa. But in terms, I think where Japan kind of differs in its own way is kind of is on actually the retail side, because when you talk licensing, generally you're talking retail, because that's where the products get sold into. So, and I think as maybe some of your other presenters have talked about Japan, the Japanese consumer, their wants, their likes, their needs, etc. I think in licensing too, it has a high level of retail sophistication, and a lot of the licensed product presence is generally in convenience stores, the GMS, what called the GMS, general merchandise stores, which is another name for the big supermarket chains like E2J and Aeon, etc. But I think just to put Japan in context of other markets, so for example, in context to comparing to the US markets, you'll see character products in a very, very wide variety of retail formats. And it's backed up by a high consumer spending, and of course, there's very, very advanced e-commerce structure. Then you move into China, who's now become a huge player in global retail, and they've got a very, very large e-commerce sector driven by the large population and what is called these live shopping things, where people with the mobile phones are selling product through to the big audiences and stuff. Japan is not as sophisticated in that way. It's a much more, the growth is it's probably kind of matured out in a way. And you'll find character products mainly in convenience stores, not so much in department stores these days, because department stores are still trying to reinvent themselves, and what's called specialty stores, which is like specialty chains like Loft or Tokyo Hands, if you've been to Tokyo. It's kind of hard to explain what those stores are, but they're kind of a grotto of all sorts of things.
Okay, that's very good. A couple of the sort of sub-expressions or terminologies that some people, again, may or may not have heard about that I'd like to explore with you and learn more about.
Okay.
These expressions, anime and manga. And could you tell us a little bit more about those two sectors or industries?
Crazy. So if you go down to your local Waterstones, is that still around, Waterstones, I think?
Oh, yes, yeah, most definitely. Yeah.
You will see a huge section of comic books from Japan, and those are manga. So basically, the whole manga industry is huge. It's basically Japanese style comic, okay? And it's a huge industry, and it's been around since forever. It started off with the very, very famous, one of the very famous early manga artists was Osamu Tezuka, who did the Atom Boy, or it's called Astro Boy as well. And a lot of the manga get made into an animation, which is called anime. Okay, and that's a Japanese stylized version of what they see, animation is. And you have original anime, which didn't necessarily start out as manga. So a lot of things get made into anime, and some anime they have spin-off manga books based on the anime as well. So anime is basically publishing, manga's publishing, anime is basically Japanese cartoons. it was really, really niche area, really kind of filled in by sort of nerdy types who kind of really liked really like the genre. But now it's very, very mainstream. It's a global business. It's really been the whole area has been fueled by the global popularity of Japanese animation and comics. A lot of it has been driven by the streamers. So when I took the streaming platforms like Netflix, Crunchyroll, Amazon Prime, Apple Plus. I'm not sure how much manga there is on Apple Plus these days, but just to give you an idea of the growth of the business, I think a lot of it has been turbocharged through Corona as well, through the coronavirus. But in 2022, the anime industry increased to 2.9 trillion yen. So that's about 6.8% up on the previous year. And of course, a lot of that was driven by people watching anime at home, right? Through Corona. In terms of manga's huge as well. That grew in 2023 by about 2.5% to 694 billion yen. And that's what that is in dollars offhand. I should have researched that in advance. Apologies. But I mean, the whole thing is really, really growing. It's so mainstream now. It used to be very niche, but now everybody is wanting manga and wanting Japanese content, J content. And so with that, you get a big demand for anime streaming rights, merchandise, collaborations with international brands. And just to give you an example, in terms of, we have a big trade fair here called Anime Japan, and it's one of the largest business anime festivals in the world. It's a 2-day public event, which attracts about 130,000 people. And the business event, which is a couple of days before that, last year had about 50 exhibitors, but everyone from all over the world came. It was the first in-person event after Corona. I think that sort of helped to fuel it. But it's really, really an amazing industry to be in.
Fantastic. And yes, so interesting to hear your overview on that, and in particular to learn about some of those trends that have gone on as a result of the pandemic and the impact that's had on it. So moving on then, Roger, another area I'd like to ask you about, kind of related to some of your earlier comments you made, but specifically I want to bring it out because I know our audience will be interested. So tell us a little bit more about the character licensing that you touched on earlier.
Okay, well, character licensing basically is, I'd say, the bedrock of licensing in Japan, because just off the top of my head, I would definitely say it probably accounts for the majority of the licensing business, the licensing activity that happens in this market. Definitely over 50%. You just walk the street to see characters everywhere. I mean, you just cannot miss characters. And you know, a lot of this is based around this term called kawaii, which means cute. So it's kind of like I want to sort of a very sort of sweet kind of cute, right? And Hello Kitty is really the queen of cute, okay, queen of kawaii, and just based around that, you know, you've got a lot of other sort of cute characters. Right now, there's one called Chi-Kawa, which is doing really, really well. Chi means small from Chisai, and Kawa is from Kawaii, so it means small and cute. And it's a little sort of, and then it's kind of, I'm not quite kind of sure what kind of animal it is. Is it a rabbit? Is it whatever? It's kind of an undefinable animal, but it's doing really, really well. And it started off as a manga in Japan, by an artist called Nagano, and it got serialized on Twitter, sorry, X, since about 4 years ago, and then it just sort of took off. Then it went into print by Kodansha, who we all know is one of the sponsors of Liverpool Football Club and also happens to be one of Japan's biggest publishers. So apologies for the drop on Liverpool there. And then it got made into an anime series in 2022. So it starts off from social media, gains a following, becomes a manga, becomes an anime. That's all in the space of 4 years, right?
Wow.
That it's just absolutely amazing. And it's becoming once it becomes really popular in Japan, and then that sort of fuses out into the rest of East Asia. So now it's really popular in Taiwan, for example, just almost real time. what happens in Japan is almost happening in real time in terms of, a character's popularity. And
Wow.
then into China, Korea. And so Japan is a real sort of, how can I say, kind of like kawaii culture leader when it comes to,
Mhm.
and a lot of Asians really look towards that. Um, a lot of things happening with character licensing. For example, collaborations between two brands. So you might see, for example, Chikawa with a like on a Converse shoe, for example. I'm not sure that happened, but just give you an example. You see a lot of
Mhm.
anime on you see a lot of anime collaborations, particularly with sketches, for example. I think they did One Piece at a time. At one time, I can't quite remember. But another really big thing which is driving the market right now is location-based experiences. So
Hmm.
yeah, I'm talking theme parks. Theme park is location-based and it's an experience. But this whole thing about LBE is really big right now. And then you have artwork exhibitions of like manga, and you have the ubiquitous sales corner where the event exclusive product is sold. You have character cafes. Um, all these things kind of build into really giving people an in-person experience and being a way to bond and create more fandom.
It's amazing. And as I'm hearing you talk through these and give these wonderful explanations of these different sectors of the market, it's
Yeah.
all resonating with me in as much as I can remember going back to my first trips to Japan back in year 2000. And I remember noting when I was on traveling on some trains and things, how adults, grown men of our age, Roger, would be browsing the comics, standing in a train, looking at the manga comics, and the characters you're talking about would apply not just to young children, but right through to adults and things. And I guess that reflects the size of the market opportunity that
Well,
you're
that's
kind of
right.
referring to and
It's
talking
very
about. So,
you either say adults are very childish, or I tend to call it I tend to call it age agnostic. It's mean it
right.
it
Yeah.
works across all age ranges, and
Yeah.
a
Very
lot
interesting.
of what you if you're a first time visitor to Japan, you see a lot of young women on the trains or the high school girls having all these bags with characters
Mm,
plush
mm,
characters hanging out on the
mm,
straps and things. I
mm,
think, God, are these people childish? No, they
mm.
are the drivers of the markets. I'll tell you a story. SpongeBob, okay? It was on NHK, late night TV. Then uh, teenagers, basically senior high school students, girls, started to watch it. And then one manufacturer brought out this sort of square plush and a keychain, and they started putting it all on the bags, right? And then it really exploded. And then NHK, because of that, they moved it to the prime time slot because of all this
Okay.
activity was
Right.
happening as a result of the female high school students' love for the brand. It was just that one hook that's caught it on.
How interesting. What a great example to share with us. Yeah, that's a great example. I wanted to also ask you, as we're running through these different sort of sectors,
Yeah.
the other one I wanted to ask you about was digital content licensing. What's
Mhm.
your view or your take on that?
Well, this is it's been happening for a number of years already, but it really sort of got turbocharged during the coronavirus, um, because everyone's at home, and a lot of people were able to experiment, and we had the whole NFT thing, which is sort of a bit like the daffodil boom back in the day. Everyone sort of saying NFT, and of course now it's completely gone off the landscape in terms of licensing as well. But basically, with the rise of digital media consumption, that's really helped to, how can I say, it's really blended in well with the whole area of character licensing, because you're getting a lot of new IP, which is emerging from what's so-called webtoons, which is web-based animation, which really started in Korea, like online novels, people reading sort of online versions of Mills and Boon, but in a more sort of, anime style, manga style, and games. So it's really fed into that. And it's also worked the other way in that there's been a lot of licensing out in forms of digital content, like in ebooks, digital art, kind of a hybrid thing with digital and physical installations, location-based experiences, etc. And of course, what's really sort of they're trying to grab on now is a lot of interactive experiences. It used to be one way, you know, you'd produce a book, you'd watch something on TV, go to the movie, but now it's become much more two-way with the advent of social media. And the best licensing companies these days really have the pulse on working social media. They have in-house digital agency capabilities to really build on the brand, because that is the main brand builders these days. It's not TV, it's not Netflix, whatever. It's really getting onto people's phones, for want of another word. AI is also coming on board now, but I think the licensing industry is sort of still working out how to work with AI within the licensing industry. I mean, already, you know, you've seen the resistance you got from the Hollywood screenwriters over the use of AI in script writing, etc. And so on the content creation side, there's, you know, they're kind of trying to come to terms of how to use AI. In terms of actual licensing itself, I mean, we can license kind of like AI experiences, for example. You could take, for example, a famous person's voice, okay, and then you could, for example, I can make a speech, I am Roger Berman, and it could be in the voice of, I don't know, Tom Baker, for example, okay? And that would be licensed from the estate, from, you know, Tom Baker's IP or something like that.
Yes.
Just as an example, okay, as something that could be done, okay?
Yeah. Okay. One more I want to ask you about, and I don't know if you have much knowledge on this, but it's an expression or a bit of terminology that is relatively new to me. Maybe not to other people, but I've heard about this kind of growth of I think it's referred to as VTubers or virtual YouTubers. Is that something you come across and you have much knowledge of?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's very big right now in Asia. It's moving into other markets. So basically, if you take me, okay, and I'm playing a video game online, okay, and I'm such a great player, I'm sharing that gameplay with a whole bunch of people through a platform such as YouTube or Twitch, and I decide to hide my face and have an avatar instead on my face, okay, and that avatar is based on, basically I put on a mask and it has motion capture, okay, and so you're not seeing me, but I'm talking, but you're seeing an avatar of me talking. That is essentially, it's a virtual avatar, and that is what a VTuber is. We call them virtual YouTubers, VTubers, okay? That is what a VTuber is. So it's basically, it's an online content creator, and it can be a virtual avatar either in 2D or in 3D. And it's really grown through this thing of these kind of, you know, really good game players sharing their gameplay online with a whole, you know, literally tens or hundreds of thousands of followers. And it's really gained popularity as a kind of a new form of entertainment. But it did emerge in Japan. It's already been around for a while. It emerged in the 2010s. And I think the best way to describe it, it's kind of a cultural synergy between Japan pop idol culture and otaku anime fan culture. Kind of brings the two together. You might have heard of Hatsune Miku, who's kind of like a real virtual idol. It's kind of brings that in as well. So it's really amazing. I mean, there's one VTuber called, it almost sounds Welsh. It's called spelled Gawr, Gawr, and it's from a company called HoloLive, which is one of the very big Japanese VTuber agencies. I mean, that company's only been around since 2021, but it really became an instant success within 1 year. And the English YouTube channel has about 4.45 million subscribers. And hear this, nearly 388 million views just for this YouTuber called Gawr. Everyone, please look at it. It's spelled Gawr space Gura. Okay, look it up. It's amazing.
Yeah, we'll share it as a link on the Export to Japan site, where next to this podcast, because it will be fascinating to delve into that. And just another great example of how market trends and dynamics are changing so fast. And for
Yes,
those that ride the wave and get into it and understand it and get the help of people like you, Roger, to help them get to that point, the
right.
opportunity is vast. So wonderful. I'm keeping a little bit of an eye on the time, Roger, and I have a couple more
Okay.
questions that I'd like to get to with you. Now, you've given us a great overview of some of those kind of subsectors and areas of licensing and brand licensing in Japan. So thank you for covering that. But I couldn't leave this conversation without sort of asking you about drawing on your 30 years experience of helping companies in Japan. Could you just give us some high-level headline thoughts of what you would share about market entry considerations for foreign companies looking to come into the Japanese market, please?
Right. I think it's pretty much the same basic points as other industries trying to get into the Japanese market. Obviously, understand the retail, understand your consumer, etc., etc. But specifically for licensing, I would say it's important for example, if you have an IP like a character, don't try to customize, don't try to tailor the character to the Japanese market. Keep the character intact, but just adapt your approach to the market. I mean, Hello Kitty, wherever you see Hello Kitty in the world, is still Hello Kitty, instantly recognizable. But in each market, there is a unique approach to that market. But Hello Kitty is still the same. Earlier we talked upon the age issue. You see adults having all these characters. So Japan, you really need to age it up. Don't think it's a kid's property. It could also be an adult property as well. Also, definitely a very, very important thing if you have an IP to bring into the Japanese market, there are certain successful property traits, what I try to call hooks a hook of success. It might be a strong storyline. Heritage is important if you've got a brand, for example, as a sort of, for example, like the V&A, for example, great brand story there. It's got a good track record in its own market because the Japanese want to say, okay, it's successful it's successful in the UK, so I want to buy into that kind of thing. And also, if it's a character, kawaii is very important, cuteness. Another important thing is protecting your brand. Copyright is fine, but it's very, very important to trademark your brand as well. A lot of people look upon trademarking as a cost. It's not a cost, it's an investment. You're protecting your brand by trademarking it. And then finally, generally understand the market characteristics. Japan, basically, they're not making babies here anymore. So it's getting an aging population. So the demographics are changing. The business style is very slow decision making. You need to develop trust. This is the same as you probably use with your other presenters. And of course, the business development here is completely non-opportunistic. It's very strategic. Okay. It's not a trade base. You have to build the relationship. Okay. It's very, very important.
Excellent. All great tips, Roger. And yes, as you suggest, they do fit into a theme from many different sectors, and other experts that we interview, like yourself, there's a very common theme coming out there, but also some very good specifics that relate to this particular sector. Now, Roger, it's very clear from this discussion we've had today and all the wealth of information that you've kindly shared with us that it's very clear that you really know your stuff in this sector. And I hope anyone listening in today really appreciates that and understands the wealth of knowledge that you can provide to help and support companies. From a commercial perspective, you've got your own business running over there, a very successful agency that you run. How do you typically engage with clients? If there's companies out there that maybe think about reaching out to you and having a discussion, what's the typical kind of commercial relationship that you have with the company?
So essentially, I both run a licensing agency and also consultancy. I find there's a lot more consultancy. Things tend to become consultancy products rather than taking on rights to be an agency these days. So initially, what I'll do is I'll have an initial consultation with a client, with a potential client over Zoom, get to know what the brand is, get to know what they're looking for in the market. And I'll either suggest one of two approaches. One will be, if I see enough potential in the brand directly, I will suggest becoming an agent on behalf of the IP owner. So basically, with any agent in Japan, you have to pay a commission, and the commission can range anything from 25 going up to 40, 50% even, depending on if you're the brand owner directly, okay? They will, but generally agency commissions average about between 30 to 33%, okay, as a licensing agent. So basically what that means is for every 1,000 yen's worth of product sale, okay, there's a royalty on that. Royalty rate might be 5%, so royalty might be 50 yen. And then you will share that 50 yen. I, as agent, would keep 30%, and I would send the rest to the licensor as their share, okay, as an agent. As a consultant, basically, like any other consultancy, would work out a project brief with projected outcomes, and I would make a quotation based on either a monthly stipend or a project fee on working with the client. Just to say, I start off, for example, you probably all remember Sports Direct, which is now Fraser's Group, I believe. So they had a subsidiary called IBML, which is International Brand Management Limited, which looked after all the third-party licensing of Slagger, Dunlop, all those brands you see inside the Sports Direct stores. When they were looking to come into the Japanese market, I started off as a consultancy, okay? Basically, I did market feasibility research for them, and they ended up asking me to be agent.
Wow.
And
Wow.
we had a great licensing program with Dunlop before Sumitomo Rubber Industries bought the rights worldwide. But that's another story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've worked with UK design companies who own a lot of IP. They think it's good for the Japanese market. They've had feedback working in the, for example, they've been to Tokyo Gift Show, maybe with a UK mission, and they've had good feedback. And I've sort of come on board to see if they think it's a market for them if it's a market worthwhile for them to work in.
Fantastic. Yeah, really good. And a great overview of how you can work with brands to help them along their journey. So Roger, in terms of people reaching out to you, I know I can see a couple of QR codes up there on your screen either side of you. So
yeah,
what's your suggestion or your preferred route for people to reach out?
Just reach out. Probably easiest is to reach out to me. Let me get my pen. Okay, it's not showing very well, but there is my email address, rmb@zenworks.jp, or you can probably very easily find me on LinkedIn. Either of those QR codes, that's fine. And I'm sure you'll
Super.
pop my contact details in the notes as well.
Of course we will, Roger.
And
No
I look
problem.
forward to hearing from people, even if it's
Yeah,
just
good. Well,
feedback.
yeah, good. And I'm sure people will be reaching out to you. And we've sort of answered some questions for organizations that were already thinking about licensing in Japan, and we've helped them with extra information. But also, I hope we might have planted some new seeds and new thoughts for companies that hadn't necessarily considered licensing, but now from your explanation, they kind of see the benefits of that. So
I should add
hope
one point, just one
yeah,
last point.
please, yeah,
If
of course.
you're considering coming to set up in Japan, there is one major trade show called Content Tokyo, which is in June. Sorry, it's in next year I think it's the end of June, which is a Tokyo big site, which is really it's the major trade show if you can launch your brand into the Japanese market. So that's half a year, well, 9 months away.
Yeah, good point regarding
And
timing.
I can help organize. That's one of my services.
Fantastic. Well, listen, for those of us kind of listening into this, I think it's been a fascinating discussion, Roger. Obviously, always great to catch up with you and pick your brains. And thank you for sharing knowledge. I think some of the stuff that we've learned from this wonderful discussion with you, we started off learning about the size and the scope of the opportunity in Japan and how big that is. You've given us a great overview of what licensing is and how it works, and very clearly articulated what a lot of the key advantages to considering the licensing business model are. You've given us a good overview of why Japan is so unique and some of the special dynamics and characteristics to think about with the Japanese market. and we covered a lot of the sort of subsector opportunities and key different areas to look at and evaluate, as well as some really interesting knowledge on some of the trends that are going on in the market and where the growth areas are and where things are moving. And obviously we covered those areas of anime, manga, the character licensing, and digital, and they're all the key areas that I wanted to cover, as well as learning a lot more about you and how you can help companies through your organization. So
definitely. I
it's
mean,
been a
if
wonderful
you're a
discussion.
British, if you're a British IP owner, for example, you have a design brand, for example, or you're a greeting card manufacturer who's had like one character's done really well, or you're the owner of an iconic brand which is might have been kind of dormant for a while in the UK, but it has a good history. All those kind of brands, those kind of IPs, I think have a possibility in Japan. So please speak to me, please speak to others in the industry, and hopefully this podcast will have been the first step into Japan.
Let's hope so. And I'm sure it will be, as always, Roger. So once again, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man. Really good of you to come back. It doesn't feel like 9 years since we last did this with you. And we'll certainly be catching up with you again before 9 years for now. But once again, thank you,
My
Roger.
pleasure.
Everyone listening in, I hope that's been valuable. I think it's been a great discussion, and I hope you take value from it. And I would echo Roger's comment. Reach out to him if you think you have an opportunity and you want to discuss more. You can see how friendly and welcoming Roger is, and I'm sure he'll be more than happy to give you the right advice. So thank you for your time, Roger. Great to catch up with you, as always.
Thank you.